You're about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. 1-877 DOCDALI. So in my dating days, we didn't really have swiping left or swiping right. Thank God, because I probably would have, somebody would have gotten major carpal tunnel swiping left on my photo. But we had the sports pub, we had the drink, we had the Shark Tank, and so I went to school at UNLV. And so when it was time to go out with your friends, you would either meet them at the bar, meet them at the club, meet them on the strip. There was the Maxim Hotel had $1.99 steak and eggs. So we would go to dinner at 11 o'clock at night. And then you would just meet up. And most of the time I was alone because I was coming off from work. I rarely drove with friends because they would drink more than I would. And so you would just go to a bar and, you know. But very interesting. In Manchester, England, there's a bar that, and apparently this isn't the first one, that is banning patrons, if they're single, from coming into the bar alone. They could wait outside if they're meeting up with their friends, but they don't want single people coming into the bar alone or being alone after 9 p.m. Now, literally, there's a sign. It's our entrance policy. After 9 p.m., alibi does not permit single entry. If you're with guests already inside the venue, please contact them in advance of entry. This is for the safety of all guests. Plus, there's a dress code. No sportswear or trackies, no Stone Island, no ripped frayed jeans, no baseball caps, no roadman vibes. This is their entrance policy sign for alibi. And so Carl Peters, the owner, explained that the policy for no single people coming in after 9 without a buddy or friend is to protect his staff. So he says if someone is on their own, it means that they're not with someone else. So if something happens to them in a late night, busy bar environment where people are drinking, it's an absolute nightmare for us to deal with. You know, and so, you know, at first when I heard this, it was because were they worried about somebody hitting on other people? I mean, that's kind of what you do at bars. And I was actually shocked this came from England, because the one thing I really, really miss in America, and maybe it's because I loved the show Cheers, is the idea of the neighborhood pub. We've talked about this, where that's where you got your news, you got your gossip, you got to wind down after work before you went and dealt with the family, so then you didn't come into the family in a bad mood. And you know, that neighborhood pub, you know, where everyone knows your name sort of thing, like Cheers. And you would walk in alone. Now, mind you, their policy is after 9 p.m. So maybe they do want the after work or the happy hour crowd where, look, I'm going to meet you, etc. But, you know, I really think America would be a better place if we had that. Yeah, just stop by, have a drink, you know, or a coffee or whatever, talk to whoever's around. You know, when you go to Starbucks, everybody's doing their own thing. They're on their phones. You can't just walk in and just start talking randomly to people. And I liked doing that. Now, the bar setting allowed you to do that. You could go into a bar and be like, hey, what's up? I love talking to other people. Now, I'm in the shopping cart line, and I'll try and talk to other people. Nobody really wants to talk. And I understand, you know, you don't really. I love standing in line. I love talking to people. I just do. I wouldn't be probably going to a bar by myself at 9. But what if there are some people who are lonely? They're at home and they want to get out there and they want to be around other people. And so they're like, you know what? I want to meet somebody, even if it's just a friend. I'm not going to be creeping on anybody. Let me just go hang out. You know, that it really does. Unfortunately, something like this could really affect, you know, how one society looks at single people. You know, like, are they all creeping? Are they all predators? Of course they're not. They're single. And they're single because they don't have a chance to be around other people, and they're trying to be around other people. They're trying to be social. So don't call somebody who's single antisocial when they're trying to come into your bar and be social. But from a medical standpoint, is it because you have individuals that when they do come late and they drink, if they don't have a designated driver, now it's on the bar to supply that. Is there a liability issue? Do you have to, as a bar owner, now make sure you're calling Uber? Now you're paying for their cab. Now, if they vomit, you're the one that has to clean it. Are you the one that has to stumble out with them and make sure they don't get hit by a car? And if that's the case, then a bar does have a right to say, look, if you're going to be coming in late after, the later hours, and you're going to be drinking alone, you need to have somebody responsible for you. And that is interesting because, I look at, I worked in a bar and I went and, people usually came to meet other people and they were with other people, but there'd be people coming up to the bar, just sitting there wanting to talk, and, you're there to talk to them, and it's fun. I like that. I love tending bar. It was a lot of fun. But, I had to keep an eye on them because if they started to stumble out, I had to make sure they didn't drive. Now, luckily, my shifts weren't the ones that were the late shifts, the overnight ones. But, there's some liability there. And so I'm not exactly sure how things are in England, but I'm hearing this isn't the only place that's doing that. Where if they don't have enough staff, because remember, another issue we're having is a lot of these places, these service sort of facilities don't have a lot of staff. The doctors are always looking for nurses. There's people always looking for waiters and waitresses, which, by the way, I don't think is going to be too much of a problem in the near future with AI because people are going to need to work, and AI will not be able to replace all bartenders and food servers and all that because people will want some human interaction. So those jobs are going to fill up again soon, hopefully. But if you don't have enough staff, now you got somebody who's, running around or groping or put up or whatever. You want their buddies to take them out. And if he doesn't have any buddies, now it's on you and the staff. So I don't know. I get that. But, I don't really care much about, there's bigger fish to fry. But I got to tell you, I would like to see what would happen, if we do bring back that neighborhood pub idea. And it's just after work. And, well, people have to go back to work, though, unfortunately, for that to work. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So one thing I am really, really getting fascinated by is the Turning Point USA rebound after Charlie Kirk's death. And these kids, these college campus kids getting interested in faith, politics. I'm fascinated by that because for decades, it's all been about, activism, for the left. And you don't see a lot of balance. And many college campuses have made students feel they didn't belong. They were wrong. And not having, the ability to debate and discuss issues, which is exactly what you're supposed to do on college campuses. Being able to see Turning Point USA grow and give all students a voice is, I think, pretty phenomenal. Unfortunately, it's come with bloodshed. Charlie Kirk was killed on September 10th, and 3 people were arrested for those fights that broke out in Berkeley. Apparently, it was pretty bloody, where men were hitting each other, and really, does it really have to get? You can't just have college students. Let college students have groups that allow them to talk about issues. They want to talk about the Bible. They want to talk about economy. They want to talk. Does it really have to get bloody? And you would think professors in academia, and I've been in academia, would really welcome the discussion of thought. I mean, when I went to school, I remember that my professors would get mad when I was like, okay, whatever. Okay, I'll just, whatever you say, fine. And I'll just take notes. Like, well, talk to me about what we just talked about. I wasn't really listening because I was thinking about, my date the other night. Whatever. But I remember not discussing and engaging was a no-no. And now it's almost as if you either just agree with me or you're a Nazi. I'm sure you heard about this. There was a retired Colorado professor that started calling people who were supporting Turning Point USA, the chapter at a Colorado college, Nazis. He's a former professor of anthropology at Fort Lewis College, David Kozak. And he was on camera November 7th yelling in reaction to the Associated Students at Fort Lewis College, the ASFLC, voting to approve the Turning Point USA chapter. Now, their decision came after, I guess, there was somebody who wanted to register it, and that got controversy, and they got denied. So they reversed their earlier rejection to deny the chapter. And then this angered the teacher. So he started cussing, using F words, calling them Nazis. Then he says, go on, fascists, go on, Nazi lovers. And then he kept using the Nazi term, and then he showed his middle finger to the camera. Now, really, come on. I think Turning Point USA has at least 4 million subscribers and rising. And I've not been to a Turning Point USA. I mean, I've listened to Charlie Kirk and spoken with him, and may he rest in peace. Should have never had his life taken as it was, and I pray for his family. But when you look at what they were, they talk about. Okay, let's talk about abortion. Let's talk about I've had to have conversations with my patients about abortion. And how we would bring it up is we would have, young women coming in for birth control, because they were becoming sexually active. And I commended them for being responsible with their reproductive health. And then I would talk to them about condoms. And they're like, but that's why I'm coming to you for birth control. I don't want to wear condoms. I go, well, what if the birth control doesn't work? It's 97% effective. There, at the time, was a 3% chance. What would happen? Oh, well, then I just get an abortion. And I go, do you know what an abortion is? And many of them didn't know what that was. Do you know what that entails? Do you know what that, we didn't have easy medical abortions at the time. And many people didn't, and I'm like, let's just kind of talk this through. And what happens if you get gonorrhea or chlamydia? But I'm on birth control. That doesn't protect you. You will need to use a condom. And it amazed me how many younger people didn't understand that. But that's okay. I didn't expect the average 15 or 16-year-old to understand all the nuances of obstetrical and gynecology and, dilatation and curettage and, aborting fetuses. And I didn't expect the average 15, 16-year-old to know that. And so it was my job to find out what they did know and then have a conversation with them. And college campuses, the reason why you send your kid to college is because their whole thinking can't just be what mommy and daddy say. You have them go to college so they learn things, so they expand their minds, so they learn they understand other people's viewpoints, meet other people, they get out of that bubble, and they grow, and then they find their calling. Yet for decades, maybe centuries, freedom of thought was suppressed. And here's Turning Point USA allowing people to have that forum. And, for years now, it's been, religion is bad. Religion means you're MAGA. Then fine. Then sign me up. I love religion. I mean, really? You don't want your youth, your young adults to find their way and just think like you? Apparently, Yvette Felarca, a public school teacher and a quote-unquote self-professed anti-fascist agitator, led 40 members of the socialist organization By Any Means Necessary in an after-action report on the group's victory last week in that bloody battle at UC Berkeley yesterday. Fox News Digital learned that Felarca was arrested for inciting a riot, moved for a vote on the next phase of the operation to stop Turning Point USA chapters, not only on college campuses, but public K through 12 schools, beginning with Berkeley High School, where she teaches. The motion passed unanimously to, quote, stop fascist recruiting in schools by amplifying the work of, quote, by any means necessary. It collects tax-deductible donations under the 501c3 nonprofit umbrella of the Detroit-based nonprofit Coalition to Defend Affirmative Action, Integration, and Immigrant Rights and Fight for Equality. The members closed the meeting with the salutation solidarity. Now, they're calling, and I'm a little bit confused about that, because if you want to protect your immigrants, you'll have to make sure that people are not taking cuts in line. I mean, we are very pro-immigrant. I'm a daughter of an immigrant. So when you have people in line doing it properly, and they can't get a court date, they can't get help because people coming here illegally cut the line. What protects the immigrant more? Getting rid of the people who cut the line, or criminals who got into this country that shouldn't be, or not? See, I'm thinking if you want to help the immigrant, you make sure that the process remains whole, safe, legal, so that they could go through the process legally and then not get deported later. I mean, come on. Yeah, I just don't understand where, this whole, defend affirmative action, integration, immigrant rights, and fight for equality. So you want to fight for equality, women's sports and men's sports? Are you, wanting women to be able to compete in their own sport, or are you fighting for equality where biological men get to compete? Then that's not equal. What is their messaging? And I think that's the problem with a lot of these groups. A fight for equality. When you have a group of conservative students who want to have a voice and a club, you're fighting for equality then. Because there's plenty of liberal groups. Why can't there be conservative groups too? Aren't you fighting for equality? So I'm really confused by this. And I think a lot of other people are. Because they try to use terms acting like the other side is not for equality. And it's showing at the polls. But I'm really sick and tired of hearing people call other individuals Nazis when the Nazis did such horrific things. I mean, I think it's a sin to do that. You have a student who wants to talk about God, wants to talk about family, and you're calling him a Nazi. People do that. They call conservatives Nazis when Trump and the MAGA movement has been one of the most pro-Israel administrations ever. Stop using that Nazi term wrong. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Don't go away. One 1-877-Doc-Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. So this is a question I've gotten a few times, and I haven't answered it on air because I can't say 100%. I haven't necessarily surveyed everybody. But the question I'm being asked is, where did all the doctors go? When most Americans lost their doctor when the Affordable Care Act was passed, and now they're seeing somebody completely different, sometimes within months of Obamacare happening, and they lost their doctor. Where did their doctor go? Now, the answer everybody got was, well, doctors went to corporate America. But not entirely. And we need to find where these doctors are and bring them back, because our healthcare system is failing. And if we do ever replace Obamacare, whether it's with Trump care or something else, Vance care, Kamala Harris care, Governor Newsom care, we got to fix Obamacare because it's a cluster and a seventh. But we need to get the doctors back. We also need to get the nurses back. We need to get everybody back. But the question today was, where did the doctors go? So for me, I held out until 2016. Could have probably held out another year or two. But because Obamacare caused deductibles to go from $500 or $2,000 to $10,000, insurance wouldn't pay the doctor until the patient spent all that money on medical costs. Well, I mean, if they're coming to me for a physical or whatever, obviously they aren't meeting that deductible. So rather than the insurance paying, the patient had to pay. And when patients wouldn't pay their bills, money wasn't coming in. And I don't blame all the patients for not being able to pay their bills because we were in a pretty bad recession for years. From 2008 to 2015, people were not paying their bills. And so by 2016, I got offered a job to teach. My show was full time. I closed the office. So that's where I went. Now, I still do some teaching. I obviously am doing my show and I do telemedicine. But if you get your Medicaid card or your Medicare card, or your insurance card, and you're trying to find a primary care doctor and you call the number you had, and some of these insurance companies still have my number there somehow, there's no office. A lot of doctors left. And a lot of people did lose their doctors. If a doctor isn't getting paid and their overhead is ridiculous, and to run a medical office, you're at 60-70% overhead, and that's at minimum. You can't stay open. Rent's too expensive. Malpractice is too expensive. Workers' comp too expensive. And I've never had any lawsuits, and my malpractice was still expensive. So doctors cannot afford to be in their own practice. And when you lost your neighborhood doctor, and your doctor, we knew and we predicted it in 2009, I should bring up the show where I said Obama is full of it because you are going to lose your doctor. The doctors didn't want to leave. It's just when you lose your neighborhood doctor or a doctor who runs their own practice, like me, I'm like, you guys, my teachers, are like, I can't, there's no doctors open on the weekends. We're like, we're open on the weekends. We'll be open on Saturday. And we were flooded with teachers every Saturday. They were so grateful. And so you have that ability to be flexible with your hours. You could stay late. But if you're not getting paid and money's not coming in and you can't pay your staff, then you can't do it. So at first, a lot of doctors did go corporate, but they didn't like corporate. Doctors don't like being told how to do medicine, especially if they think they're being told how to do it wrong. A lot of people work for companies and they tell me, they want me to do X, Y, and Z. But there's instinct. I really think this person could have a tumor. I want to order the test. In fact, a lot of doctors in the early teens, 20 teens, were getting fined or getting dinged for ordering scans like in an ER that ended up being negative. And so if you ordered a test and it was negative, you got in trouble, basically. And when don't you want to make sure you're ruling out pathology? And so doctors are like, no, this is not how I do medicine because you aren't protecting me against lawsuits then. And so a lot of doctors, especially the older ones, said, you know what? I'm retiring. I'm done. And many of them did. Some doctors retired and then, worked on real estate investment. But what about the middle-aged doctors? What about those my age? What did we do? Well, I went to telemedicine. Some people went corporate. But what a lot of doctors did is they went to concierge. They went to, look, you know what? To hell with insurance. They're not paying us anyway. If you want to see me, you can pay cash. But I'm going to take good care of you. And these doctors would limit their practice. You would pay a monthly fee or a yearly fee. And they were at your beck and call. You had their cell number. And they were happier. And they built a practice. And from what I'm hearing, my friends who do this, they have mile-long waiting lists. Because people want a doctor that they could get into. You see, for me, I had same-day appointments all the time. I rarely put anybody down. The longest anybody had to wait for an appointment was maybe one full day. Now, you're not getting an appointment till next June. That's how bad it is. So where did a lot of doctors go? They went to concierge or direct primary care or a way where they have easier access to their patients. The patients have easier access to them, but it costs more money for you out of pocket. Now, some of these doctors will still take your insurance. They'll use your insurance for your MRI you need or your mammogram or your blood work. But for their services, you pay cash. And there's a lot of patients who say they prefer that. Now, you also have a lot of doctors who decide to leave medicine completely. And this is crushing. I am hearing every year doctors who I thought were going to be in this field for 30, 40, 50 years say, I retired from medicine. How? Aren't you still paying on your student loans? They retired. And it just wasn't worth it. They didn't want to work for a company. They didn't want to get sued. They didn't want, and they were like, I'm not happy in medicine. And how do you get those people back? Because in order for the next phase, Obamacare 2.0 or Trump care or Vance care or Newsom care or Mamdani care to happen, you have to have doctors. The reason why socialized medicine is failing in these other countries is nobody can see a doctor. If the socialized medicine says, you see, we're saving money. Well, you're saving money because nobody's able to, they're coming to America to get seen. I can't tell you how many Canadian patients I had because they didn't want to wait 3-4 months to get a scan. Well, now you're waiting at least that just to see the doctor. Now, telemedicine has bridged that where people can go to a telemedicine doctor, but they can't get all the referrals there. They can't get everything they need online. There's restrictions. Plus, they still need a physical. So how do you get doctors back? Well, we look to the schools. Okay, so you think, all right, we got a lot of young, energetic, excited kids that are graduating medical school. And boy, are these medical schools money hungry, and they are expanding their class size and just, promising the world to these students. And I'm hearing from the graduates, whoa, okay, it's not supposed to be like this, because they're thinking about what their doctor experience used to be with their pediatrician or their family doctor. And then they go through this training and they're like, everybody I'm working for is miserable. Everybody I'm working for says they're going to quit. And then they get out a year or two and they're not happy. I mean, I was really excited coming out of school. And I loved my life. I didn't start getting burned out until about 10 years after. And everybody said you get burned out by 10 years. I'm hearing that these people are getting burned out by a year. Because now, rather than doing your notes and whatever, it's, well, you got to do all these standards. There's all these guidelines. The company wants you to do this and this. So you're spending so much time on the bureaucracy and very little time with the patient. And you thought you could spend more time with the patient. And then because these patients aren't going to the doctor regularly, their medical provider regularly, they don't have a simple, easy problem to address. They're all going to telemedicine for that. So you're getting somebody who really, you need to really spend an hour with, and you don't get an hour to spend with them. And so these doctors are getting frustrated. So how to get them back, I don't know. Because the easy, simple cases that really aren't always simple, because I've had people with CSF fluid leaks and broken ribs and dislocations calling telemedicine. I'm like, you got to go to urgent care or ER. We need to get the doctors, like I was trained as family medicine, to be able to do the medicine that they were trained to do. And now everything is so separated. And in fact, even like OB-GYNs, you have laborists that'll deliver the baby. So you have a complete stranger delivering your baby. God bless them for doing that. But if somebody wanted to deliver babies, now they have to choose. Are they going to be an OB-GYN or a laborist? 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away. We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So the critics lost their mind when President Donald Trump said that he was going to be dismantling the Department of Education. And that Linda McMahon, her primary job in running the Department of Education is to make herself lose her job. And she agreed with that plan. That's her job. And they are starting to dismantle it. But one thing that was very interesting is she wrote a piece for USA Today. And she said that the shutdown proved just how little the Department of Education will be missed. She writes, our nation just experienced the longest government shutdown in history, 43 days, which came smack in the middle of the fall semester. Showed every family how unnecessary the federal education bureaucracy is to their children's education. Students kept going to class. Teachers continued to get paid. There were no disruptions in sports seasons or bus routes. The shutdown, she says, proved an argument that conservatives have been making for 45 years. The U.S. Department of Education is mostly a pass-through for funds that are best managed by the states. That's why, she says, now that the government shutdown is over, we are emboldened to fulfill President Donald Trump's promise to return education to the states. She said, to be clear, returning education to the states does not mean the end of federal support for education. It simply means the end of a centralized bureaucracy micromanaging what should be a state-led responsibility. Funding for low-income students and students with disabilities predates the Education Department and will continue indefinitely. Protecting students' civil rights is work that will never go away. She says these critical functions are required by law and will continue even if the building where they are housed does not have education on the door. So they're going to peel back the layers of federal bureaucracy, partner with agencies that are better suited to manage the programs, empowering the states and local leaders to oversee the rest. And they say these partnerships are commonplace across the federal government to improve service delivery and increase efficiency. So they say in May, the department established a successful partnership with the Department of Labor to better coordinate federal workforce development programs. And they launched the first of its kind integrated state plan portal and streamlined federal workforce development programs. We believe that other department functions would benefit from similar collaborations. So, she goes on to talk about, waivers and things like that. I'm actually mixed on this. On one end, when we have a government agency that is not doing jack diddly squat and is costing taxpayers money, yeah, close the sucker down. Absolutely. The Department of Education has up until now looked like they completely failed. When we have students who are really, really lacking in proficiency, they're struggling in math, reading. We're hearing college-level kids have to take remedial math classes just to start college. I mean, what are we doing with our kids? And so the Department of Education has not done its job. So why are we continuing to pay them? Also, I'm a fan of states knowing what their local kids need. And, different communities, different, and so some may need more English as a second language teachers. Some might need more substitutes. Some might need more funding to get teachers because they live in more expensive areas. And so I completely understand that every community, a community school may have to meet the needs of that community, which I think a lot of Democrats agree with, too. They don't want government involved, as much either, they want more, choice in schools. So I think it's something that bipartisanly people are happy. But this is where I'm mixed. Okay, I told you how I think schools need to be. We've been doing school all wrong. All right, none of this sitting for 8 hours doing math and reading. All the core classes should be no longer than 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes at max, and all done in the morning. So all these kids get their math, their reading, their science, all those classes done in the morning. Then they have lunch. If they get bullied at lunch, they can eat at home, or they can eat at the cafeteria, whatever. And then the afternoon is all your life skills and practical learning and exposure to the trades. From kindergarten through sophomore year, depending on their age, they get exposed to the, to the farming, to marketing, to education. The older students to plumbing, electricians, medicine, stock market, and they all learn first aid. They all learn CPR. They all learn a second language. They all learn, and so all their practical life skills, group work is all sports in the afternoon. But what helps prevent us having people who are not proficient is the problem I had is I went to 12 schools. So everybody was on a different curriculum. So with kids who move, you're not learning a lot of the same things. So I that's where I think the Department of Education can help, where everybody is learning the exact same thing at the exact same time. And then the makeup is easier to do because we know what block they missed. And then we can make up that one block. This way, kids like me that moved around, I didn't get metrics. there's a lot of things I didn't get because I moved and I just missed it because the school was on a different path. So, but school ends K through 10 ends sophomore year, and then junior and senior year, while they're still technically under the taxpayer dollar for school, that's where they get their associate's degree or their trade certificate. Because by the time they're 16, they'll have had such a good exposure to everything in the trades and all that they know what they might want to do. Age 17 and 18, they get their trade certificate or associate's degree. So by the time every kid is 18 years old, they have at least a certificate or qualifications or something to get started and to be able to get a job. And now we don't have to pay for free college. You're going to hear in the next few presidential campaigns, college has to be free. College has to be free. We need to give these colleges the tens of thousands of dollars per student like we do Obamacare. So no, we don't. Okay, they could get their free college during K through 12. The average 17 and 18-year-old sits in class and texts. So why isn't age 17 and 18 or your junior and senior year when you're getting your college? I mean, it could be incorporated into that. But in order to make that a reality, you do need somebody directly overseeing it. So that's where I mix. I really like the idea of schools knowing what their community needs, etc. But I think if that's how all American kids are trained, can you imagine every single student in every single city, in every single demographic will have either an associate's degree or a trade certification by the time they are 18? Will have a CPR, first aid certification. Will be fairly fluent in another language. Will know how to farm. Will know how to camp. Will know how to hunt. Will know how to fish. Will know how to garden. All the practical stuff that they learn throughout school. So every kid is pretty well and can have an idea of what they want to do later in life. So the Department of Education can make that happen. It's just, I know people are going to moan and groan saying it's going to be too much work. It's going to be too much money. It's actually not. That's going to save the whole free college. And kids are going to be engaged in school. You have a kid sitting on their butt on a hard plastic chair for 8 hours? No, they're not learning. And 20 to 30-minute math lessons and reading lessons, you could get a lot done. And that's the early part of the morning. So, there's so much we could do with education that we're not doing. And we're failing when we see how these students are not passing. They're not proficient. How is that? And, I get it. I moved a lot. So, if you're missing that lesson, you're missing that lesson. But, and also, physical education, as I've said before, we remediate for academics. Why aren't we remediating for physical activity? If a kid can't run a 7-8 minute mile, well, then they should have remediation where coaches work on their physical activity and their health. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed.
put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive this stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
You are about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
Back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOCDALI. So a lot of you are bloated, and the bloating issue is getting worse. And I could see many of you guys are bloated. I get bloated too. I'm actually going to be trying gluten-free more because I notice gluten is a protein in carbohydrates that can unfortunately cause excessive bloating and if you react to it poorly. And so, I have irritable bowel syndrome, and we've talked about irritable bowel syndrome and FODMAPs, which I'm going to remind you all a little bit about. And yes, we're going to talk about irritable bowel, but it's more about what you guys are going through. Now, one caveat I do need to say is this cold that everybody's having may start out with some bowel issues. I am seeing a lot of people say that with this cold, they started having either diarrhea or gas or bloating, and then they start to get the sore throat and the cough and all that. Even though flu and COVID could do that, I know a lot of people haven't been testing positive for flu and COVID with this latest illness, so I'm not really sure what they're calling it yet. But if you are starting to get some bowel issues, it comes with the virus, and that could be something that will hopefully only be temporary. But a lot of people have permanent bloating. They always feel bloated. They always feel distended. And I really do think it's a lot of the foods we eat. I think we really make horrible choices with our food. And it's not that we're eating junk food on purpose. It's we're going to the grocery store going, well, you know what? This looks good. It's a basil aioli sauce thing. And it's, oh, this is nice. I'll have some hummus. I'll have some. And you're thinking you're picking a healthier food, but there's so much crap and preservatives in this food that you don't realize you're reacting to it. And so bloating can also be very, very serious if there's a serious pathology causing bloating. So why do we bloat? So your bowel has a choreography in order to move things out, all right? You're supposed to eat small bites. You start your digestion with your fork and knife, and then with the saliva in your mouth. You're not supposed to swallow chunks of food. You're supposed to let your mouth dissolve it as much as it can. Then you're supposed to swallow the very small bite. It's supposed to go down the esophagus, go through the lower esophageal sphincter, get into the stomach, where the stomach acid starts to dissolve it. Then it makes it into like this very thin paste. And your small intestine has to figure out from that paste what nutrients it needs, and it draws out the nutrients from that paste. What the small bowel doesn't need, it then dumps. And then when it dumps, it goes into your large intestine. Now, your large intestine isn't just for dumping. What your large intestine does now is make sure that it takes the water content out of that food. There's a lot of water in our food, as you can see with spinach, iceberg lettuce, etc. So the colon will churn that paste down, form it into poop, while pulling out desperately needed water. Then you're supposed to poop. If you don't have time for that process, sometimes the stool is very diarrhea and liquidy. If the stool is sitting there for days, it gets very hard and dried out because it's been churning for a while, which is why we want to make sure you have regular bowel movements. We want to make sure you hydrate really well. We want to make sure you use fiber to help bulk up the stool, make it easier to pass. In order to get the stool to pass, not only do you have movement within the smooth wall muscle and the colonic and the intestinal wall, but also they use gas, and gas helps move the bowels. And so when you're like, oh, I got to hold it all in, I can't toot because I'm at work, I would, run to the bathroom or the car, not the elevator. That's never a good place to do that in, and make sure you pass the gas you need, because that helps the bowels move. And it helps with those major mass movements. And gas could be a sign that there's too much air. Maybe you swallowed too much air because you were talking when you were eating, or you're chewing too much gum, or you're eating food that you're not digesting, or there's air trapping because you're constipated and the bowels aren't moving. So you got to make sure your bowels are moving. You also need to make sure you don't have an issue with your pancreas, your gallbladder. If you're not digesting the food well, things are going to stop up. It's going to mess with traffic. It's going to be like an orange cone. So sometimes your bloating could be a gallbladder issue or a pancreatic issue. It could also be a thyroid issue, diabetes. It could be the gut microbiome is out of balance. I mean, these are things that can, very seriously impact your bowel. And then for some people, it could even be a mass, something gynecologically or prostate, or something that could be pushing on the bowel or bladder. And so when somebody has bloating, we are always, kind of concerned about your ovaries and other things to make sure that we aren't missing, ovarian pathology or cancer or something like that. But a lot of it is what we eat. And so FODMAP foods are notorious for those of us with small intestine that affects our bowels. Basically, FODMAP stands for fermentable oligo and monosaccharides and polyols, okay? And basically, not that this is explaining, but there's groups of carbohydrates and sugars and foods and additives that get fermented or broken down by bacteria. When the bacteria breaks down the sugar, it produces gas. So these carbohydrates don't digest well in the small intestine, and then they end up causing, motility issues, gas issues. So high FODMAP foods include some fruits like apples, pears, watermelon, dried fruit, avocado, raisins. Now, I like avocado. I think avocado is healthy for cholesterol. But this is for people who suffer from irritable bowel syndrome and gas. Certain dairy, which is high in lactose, like cream cheese, yogurt, ice cream, milk. Certain vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, onions, mushrooms, lima beans can mess with the gas and irritable bowel. Grains like cake, wheat, pasta, egg noodles. Food additives that have like sugar substitutes that end in OL. Pesto sauce, my favorite. Sugarless gum and candy. Alcohol like beer and rum could affect your bowels. So what are low FODMAP foods? What foods may be better? Well, fruits like bananas, orange, grapes, strawberries, blueberries, cantaloupe, kiwi, lactose-free dairy, hard cheese like Swiss, certain vegetables like carrots, celery, squash, eggplant, spinach, zucchini, rice, oats, polenta, buckwheat grains. Avoid certain food additives, of course. But get this, alcohol like vodka, gin, and whiskey, not as bad as the rum. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away. Hi, guys. Dr. Dahlia here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping, addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdahlia.com. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Let's face it, guys, we're living in times where the truth is becoming more suppressed and censorship is increasing at an alarming rate, especially on social media platforms. It's Clyde, and I want to tell you about a safe and secure digital playground we put together just for you. It's aftermath.media. You get access to thousands of Ground Zero archives and podcasts, along with our private social media groups with your basic membership starting at only $7 a month. Each subscription includes tech support, access to the RSS feeds, along with our own chat room and Telegram channel. In addition, the premium membership includes research study groups, webinars, a document and movie library, a live video stream of Ground Zero, a monthly Zoom chat with me, and other bonus content. Be sure to check out our yearly specials as well. Sign up today while you're thinking about it. Sign up at aftermath.media. Again, that's aftermath.media.
All is calm, all is bright. We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So, the Jeffrey Epstein issue, I think, has really taken the wrong turn. Okay, we have a very sick, may he not rest in peace, may he rot in hell, very sick man who runs a sex trafficking ring with underage kids and gets entrenched in politics, in these big wigs and with these wealthy people, gets himself very enmeshed with the high society individuals, and exploits girls, causes who knows how many victims' lives ruined by the horrors that they endured. And it has become something now as a political football. And it's taken a turn that is really diminishing what really needs to be done, and I don't understand why it's gone on this long. I mean, they were able to find Tom Brady's. When I keep bringing this up, Tom Brady's jersey got stolen after one of his games years ago, and they were able to find it in Mexico within 48 hours. They were able to figure that out, but here we are with Jeffrey Epstein years later, while the Biden administration had them. While the Trump administration had him. And we're still going through this back and forth on these emails being released and who were involved and who went to this island. I just don't get that. I don't get why it's still so confusing. And now, and I do think everything should be released. I don't understand why the Bidens didn't release it. I'm not sure why there's been so much delay. But we can assume the reason why is because of the culture of media now. So if somebody's name, Jeffrey Epstein emailed everybody and their mother, which means anybody that had any sort of a discourse or communication with this piece of crap will now be brutally vilified in the media. And so Hakeem Jeffries, for example, apparently had an email exchange, allegedly. The Hakeem Jeffries team invited Jeffrey Epstein to a 2013 fundraiser because he was, to raise money. I think this came from Lisa Rossi. We are thrilled. This was Jeffrey Epstein. We are thrilled to announce that we are working with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, one of the rising stars in the New York congressional delegation, sometimes referred to as Brooklyn's Barack. He is a staunch supporter of President Obama and a progressive voice for the people of New York City. NY1 did a profile piece about his work on the vitally important Budget and Judiciary Committee in Washington. Hakeem is committed to electing a Democrat majority in 2014 and is encouraged. So anyway, they go on inviting, Jeffrey Epstein to this, to this fundraiser. Now, I'm sure people are, saying, oh, my gosh, he took money from Jeffrey Epstein. This is, horrible. They get Jeffrey Epstein I mean, that does not mean Hakeem Jeffries went and did horrible things to, innocent girls. But this is one of the reasons why I think the Biden administration, as well as the Trump administration, said we got to be careful, because now everybody and their mother is going to be associated with this man. And, how do we make sure the media reports on this responsibly? Now, the House passed a bill. I think it's gone through the Senate, and Donald Trump is going to sign a bill to compel the Justice Department to release more files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Just release all of them. But that apparently can be very careless if you just release all of them, because there are victims whose names need to be protected. There are many individuals that came forward to say what happened, but they don't want it public knowledge. They don't want it on TMZ. They don't want it on these shows out there. And so to release all of them, that there's been some, again, you need to be responsible. And what I don't understand is, why haven't these already been protected? You could very easily black out the names. You could very easily protect and say this is to protect the person's identity. I mean, there's ways to help protect confidentiality. But Speaker Mike Johnson said the way the bill was written, it did not seem to protect the victims as it should have. So we'll see what happens. However, the Republicans don't want to look like they're trying to hide something. And I really am of the belief that if the Biden administration did think that there was a smoking gun with Trump, that would have been released. I mean, there is, I really think Donald Trump went to that island and slept with them. No, I don't. He had beautiful wives. He didn't need to have Epstein set him up with sexual conquests. He did not need to get advice like, Larry Sanders, from Harvard, former Harvard president. Let me get that story as well. This was a huge operation that involved a lot of people and a lot of high ups. Yeah, Larry Summers, former president of Harvard University, has now stepped back from his public commitments because of these emails revealing his communications with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And I believe some of these were even after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested. So I haven't really been following this story as close as everybody else. But a university spokesperson said that, Summers' office is going to resign. He's also going to resign from the board of OpenAI. Now, with damning emails, it's understandable. I mean, that these emails do suggest, that there was a relation, there was possibly more to his involvement than just hanging out with a big donor. And it found that apparently Epstein visited Harvard's campus more than 40 times after his 2008 sex crimes conviction, and was also given his own office and unfettered access to a research center he helped establish. Why was Jeffrey Epstein at Harvard? This makes no sense. According to a spokesperson, Jason Newton, he said the university is conducting a review of information concerning individuals at Harvard, included in the newly released Jeffrey Epstein documents, to evaluate what actions may be warranted. Summers said Tuesday that he would step back from public commitments. His office said he's also resigning from the board of directors of OpenAI. And, he apparently joined their board in November 2023. So, I'm not here to go into each individual, relationship, but sadly you had a sick person that you got to be very, very careful with, because I don't want to cuss on air, Jeffrey Epstein, who somehow, had this persona of being the person you want to be with around. He's going to give you money, and he bought his way into circles. And then these circles communicated with him. And some of these individuals in these circles utilized his disgusting, perverted altar life. And that should people who engaged in illegal activities should be brought to justice. And that's what the concentration should be on. But if Hakeem Jeffries, hobnobbed with him and wanted him to donate to his campaign, join the club, there's so many, Democrats who got money from this guy. I'm very, very concerned with that. Was it Plaskett, the Democratic congresswoman who was texting Jeffrey Epstein while in a hearing? Was it Michael Cohen? Well, there was a hearing about Jeffrey Epstein, and he's texting her and coaching her on that. That needs review. That needs an immediate investigation. But people were entrenched with this guy. Everybody's talking about, well, Trump was entrenched with him because he went to parties. He sent him a birthday card. If Hakeem Jeffries got money from him, what other ties? So the ties to this guy. I think even Jasmine Crockett might have allegedly gotten money from Epstein. That's what he did. So when these files get released, it is going to be an absolute Lollapalooza with names flying everywhere. And what really needs to happen is we don't need these pseudo detectives going, well, wait a second, maybe this person slept with this person or this person. We need the true suspects arrested and justice, served, them tried and justice served. But there's going to be all these now witch hunts. 1-877 Doc Dolly. Hi guys, Dr. Dahlia here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdahlia.com. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Let's face it, guys, we're living in times where the truth is becoming more suppressed and censorship is increasing at an alarming rate, especially on social media platforms. It's Clyde, and I want to tell you about a safe and secure digital playground we put together just for you. It's aftermath.media. You get access to thousands of Ground Zero archives and podcasts, along with our private social media groups with your basic membership starting at only $7 a month. Each subscription includes tech support, access to the RSS feeds, along with our own chat room and Telegram channel. In addition, the premium membership includes research study groups, webinars, a document and movie library, a live video stream of Ground Zero, a monthly Zoom chat with me, and other bonus content. Be sure to check out our yearly specials as well. Sign up today while you're thinking about it. Sign up at aftermath.media. Again, that's aftermath.media.
On the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So one thing that does keep me up all night is the affordability of America and how are my boys going to support themselves and get married and be able to keep a job that can fire them in a moment's notice if AI takes over. And how do I retire? I don't have enough money in savings. I, worked for myself, didn't really have a 403B or 401k or any of that because I had to pay off student loans, and Obamacare was unfortunately preventing money from coming in, and it was a cluster and a seventh. I tried saving, I did the best I could, and I'm, still trying to do the best I can, but these are things that keep me up all night. And in the political world, what keeps a lot of Trump supporters up all night is if Trump cannot prove that, he got affordability down, the Republicans may not win the next election. Now, that should not be the first, focus. Obviously, the focus should be your own families. But, what can Trump do to make things more affordable? Well, just like with COVID, I mean, it was not his fault during that administration that there was COVID. In fact, he tried to stop the shutdowns but cities decided, and I am in support of city rights. State. I do like states having autonomy, over the federal government. It's just unfortunately the decisions they made in terms of lockdowns and shutdowns, I think, did more damage than good, and we're still seeing the ramifications of that. And so, Ronald Reagan most famously said, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" when he challenged Jimmy Carter in the '80 election. And that is a question that is going to keep coming up in every election. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Well, if you feel that your job is secure, you're able to afford rent, your gas prices are down, your egg prices are good to get down, you think your city is safer, you think your kids are learning in school, you feel like you have more freedom of speech, you're not getting canceled, then you're going to say, yes, and we'll vote in Vance or Marco Rubio or whoever follows Trump. If you feel like, no, I have family members who may be deported, who I have, my job, I'm losing my job because of AI. My rent is still up. I can't afford houses. I'm not really seeing much of a change. Socialism sounds good. I think I like what Mamdani is pitching. Then the Democrats are going to have a chance to take back the White House. Now, Mamdani, it's really fascinating because he's already asking for money. This anti-capitalistic attitude that he has, apparently he needs capitalism to do what he wants to do. He is asking supporters for $4 million to fund the transition. This isn't to get this isn't to, help, make government funded grocery stores and free child care. He needs $4 million so he could start his work early. He says, I hope very soon not to have to ask you for money, but until then, I'm asking you to go to transition2025.com to give whatever you can. So an incoming mayor says transition operations do not qualify for public matching funds, unlike campaign contributions. He says, now, unlike the campaign, transitions do not get public matching funds from the city. So that 8-to-1 match gone. 8-to-1. Gosh, that's a lot of money of public funds. He says it's up to us to raise the money. Usually campaigns take that as an opportunity to rely on wealthy donors, but that's not us. Mamdani, who's a self-described democratic socialist, says we need to raise $4 million in total, so January 1st can be the day we start to deliver, not start to prepare. Now, apparently he has raised already more than $1 million. The average donation has been $77.65 on average. People giving 25, people giving 150, whatever. And there's been 12,707 donors. And he says we have to vet the 50,000 resumes we've received. We have to keep paying our incredible team. And we have to plan not just our inauguration, but our policy implementation. So here Mamdani wins. He's anti-rich. He's anti-Semitic. He's anti-capitalism. He's anti a lot of things, and anti-police. But he needs help. He's going to need police. I mean, in fact, it sounds like he's kind of sucking up to Tish, the commissioner. And he's going to ask her to stay on, which I think is smart. You definitely don't want to tick off the police officers any more than you already have. But one thing I do credit is I do like the idea of already getting to work. I do like that. Trump did that too. He said, I want to, on day one, already get stuff done. So he already had executive orders ready to go. I mean, he didn't have to ask people for money to do that. Mamdani needs money, but Trump was ready to go. And I like that. I like how day one, you don't want to be like, all right, well, let's find our offices. Let's do our sexual harassment, and DEI videos that we all have to do, and all new onboarding and, then fill out your paperwork. And then, you know what? Okay, just everybody get a good night's sleep and we'll get started tomorrow. Oh, wait, Tuesday. well, we're doing shorter work weeks. Who's working from home? I mean, that, at least Mamdani sounds like he wants to. See, he's got something to prove. He wants to prove socialism works. And so he wants to show results. It's going to be very interesting to watch. I am not looking forward to it. I think he's going to fail on multiple levels. I don't want to see New York fail. I have family there. I love our listeners out there. I want all American cities to do well, but he's got work to do. But the thing is then is, are you really a socialist? Are you really a Marxist? You're asking people to pay you to do your work. You're also asking people to, they're struggling in New York, and you're asking them to help you pay for your staff. Now, some people are doing that. They're like, fine by me. But, are you, I mean, you got to be really, really honest, because for you to be where you were, capitalism made you who you were. And New York City is the capital of capitalism. That's where that's the heartbeat of our economy. There's, that's New York City. That's where Wall Street is. That's where, I think we need to be realistic. I also think we're going to be seeing changes in definition of to fit certain campaigns. And when I hear people say, yeah, I want to be a socialist, I want socialized medicine, I want socialism, I'm like, do you really, really know what that is? Do you really understand what that is? Because some of the things Mondami is talking about is actually communism. And so I think people are getting a lot of their definitions wrong, and that which need to be addressed. But going back to, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? I think as a country, we're better. I think not fearing cancel culture, not beating up on certain demographics and making them feel like they don't have a place in America because of their political affiliations. Starting to turn more towards faith for those who want to, being able to talk on college campuses. I mean, I think this country is getting better as a whole. But how are people doing financially? If they're going to lose their job to AI, and what these companies also have to think about, if they're selling a product, I mean, like Apple, for example, Apple should be freaked out then about AI, because these people are buying $2,000 phones. How do you buy a $2,000 phone if you don't have a job? Now, I am sure, there's going to be Obama phones or something like that will come with the next administration or whatever, depending on who wins. But everybody should have a right to it's their right. The Obamacare of cell phones. Everybody should have access to a cell phone. And I think everybody should have access to a cell phone. It's just how much can the taxpayers pay, especially if they're not working. So these tech companies are going to have a tough time selling their product to people who don't have jobs. And we are going to AI ourselves to extinction, because there's, people are not wanted anymore. Employers don't want the call-outs. They don't want the lawsuits. They don't want the labor disputes. They don't want the stealing. So it's going to be tough for the next campaign. 1-877 Doc Dolly. Don't go away.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit, and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 799 and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 799. Again, FREE to 799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. So what's been in the news recently is a lot of young people getting plastic surgery. And apparently Simone Biles, who's exquisite, has opened up about her plastic surgeries that she's had. Biles has confirmed she had breast augmentation. She said it was not driven by dissatisfaction with her appearance. And I understand you do have to be, in your sport. One thing that did limit me in sports was the size of my breasts, although my breasts were a little too big for a lot of sports. So I do understand reconstructing, if you are in sports. But she apparently had breast augmentation. She also had lower blepharoplasty. Lower blepharoplasty is an eyelid surgery used to either lift the eye appearance or remove eye bags. If she had lower lid blepharoplasty, bleph means lid, like blepharitis, inflammation of the lid. Blepharoplasty means she had surgery on the lower eyelids. It reduced puffiness or eye bags. She says these were hereditary, that she got fixed. She also had admitted that she had an earlobe repair. She had a torn earlobe, which happened when an earring was ripped out when she was a child. Now, this is something I saw happen to many of my friends, where they would sleep in an earring or something. It would grab onto something, you turn, and then it would pull off an earlobe. So she had her earlobe fixed. And then she also had admitted, I believe this was to People magazine, that she received baby Botox for her 27th birthday. But she stated on social media that she did not like the results and she would not be doing it again. So you have an exquisite woman, such as Simone Biles, and a very gifted one. Now, I may not agree, with everything she has posted, and I know she kind of got herself into a back and forth with Riley Gaines, and being such an icon for girls in women's sports, who won intersport in an all-women competition. I know a lot of people kind of expected, a little different attitudes towards, protecting women in sports, but I think she is still one of the most talented and highly decorated Olympians of our time. And having no shame, having elective surgeries and hinting at multiple procedures that she got, a lot of young people will say, well, I want to look like Simone Biles. She looks happy. She looks confident. She's exquisite. And we are seeing a lot of individuals choose to do that. Now, we had attitudes against this for years. And it was taboo. You would hide the fact that you got it done. And because people wanted to think that they were just naturally. Remember, we would hide the fact we would dye our hair. I remember watching the old I Love Lucy shows. And, she'd be telling her friend, no, I can't go tomorrow because I'm getting my hair dyed. Done. Hide my hair done. And it's like, obviously she was dyeing her hair. She was a redhead in the 50s, please. And so, the jokes about how people would feel like they had to hide it, nowadays it's different. But, even with, breast augmentation and things like that, people are becoming very open about the procedures they're having. But what I get concerned about are these young women who are at their most beautiful deciding to go under the knife. Now, I'm mixed, as I'm with everything. You know, when somebody has body dysmorphic disorder and they really can't stand a body part of theirs, and the body part is perfect, we need to help them through that. But if they do have a body part that's really bothering them, like I had a mole on my leg that I really always hated. It was so ugly. And I have pretty nice legs. And I always felt like I had to cover my legs because of that mole. So finally in medical school, I had my friend remove it. My fellow resident removed it and did a good job. And I, you know, have a little scar there. But now, I mean, I was able to feel like I could always be, you know, in skirts and things like that because I always kept it covered because I hated that mole. That mole was so ugly. It was so visible. And it was, and so I really think that if there are some things that really affect your confidence, you know, the only plastic surgery I've had was a mastopexy, which was a breast lift. I like to be very active. I'm pretty athletic. And after the babies and breastfeeding, the boobies were really limiting my athletic activities. And, you know, I wanted them, you know, more centered again on the chest. And so I had them lifted. And I was so grateful to have gotten that done. And I was in my 30s when I got that done. And I was like, you know, wow, I wish I would have done this sooner. But I was so afraid to go and get plastic surgery. I also couldn't afford it because it was, you know, going to be expensive. But when my friends said they did it, it was the best thing they ever did. You know, I was like, wait a second, you know, I'm doing it so I could be more mobile, more active. And so to me, there were health benefits for doing it. But what about these kids that want to fix their nose? Or they don't like their eye shape, or they don't like their lips. You know, you start using, these things like Botox or fillers early, you know, the face starts to change. And, you know, I have not done Botox yet. I might. I mean, the problem is I'm seeing myself on TV and I'm like, oh God, I need to do something. I need to do a lot. You know, I think I need to do a facelift. I might have to lift the eyes, do a blepharoplasty, but I don't want to look like these women that have had multiple procedures. You could tell, you know, their face changes. They start to look like, I think they call it cat lady. I mean, where their face starts to widen. Like, I don't want to do that. And you know, but on the other end, if there are some things that are really, really bothering you that can get fixed, you know, you want septoplasty because you're not breathing well through your nose, and they could change the shape of the nose at the same time. I'm fine with that. I think improving yourself, if it's something that needs to be improved, but if it's something that doesn't need to be improved, and you're trying to look like somebody else just because of, you know, you don't have to do that anymore. With filters, with lighting, your nose could be perfect. I wanted a nose job for the longest time. I thought my nose was too big. And then my distant cousin, from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Jennifer Grey is, I think, my fourth cousin, because my mom's third cousin is Joel Grey, Cabaret Joel Grey. So Jennifer Grey, I've never spoken with her. You know, I've tried to reach out to her team, and probably everybody and their mother says they're related, so I've never spoken with her, but she and I are related. And you know, she got the nose job, and she's exquisite, but she's unrecognizable. That's not the Jennifer Grey we know from Ferris Bueller and Wolverine and all that other stuff, or Red Dawn, and so and Dirty Dancing. So, you know, I never got my nose done, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. You know, but yeah, there's a lot of things I would like to do. But again, I'm old. I'm not old, but I mean, I'm middle age. These 20-year-olds, these 16-year-olds, these 27-year-olds, you are at the height of your youthful beauty. Got to be careful. You got to rethink that. And this is something that, unfortunately, you know, we're goading people into, saying you could look like Simone Biles, you could look like Beyonce, you could look like Jennifer Lopez. You know how many people want to look like Jennifer Lopez, who's in her 50s? Now, I mean, again, that's taken a lot of money. And some people don't, you know, and it's interesting because, you know, people always ask, how come some of the plastic surgery really changes people, like Meg Ryan and Melanie Griffith, but then you have Jennifer Lopez and other people that still look more like themselves? Well, it depends on what they get done. And you also need a very conservative surgeon, not conservative meaning, you know, in terms of politics, but in terms of what are they going to do? We're just going to do a little bit here. We're going to do a little bit there. We're going to see how your body takes. We're going to see how your body likes it. We're going to see how, and you don't want somebody saying, well, we're going to because the problem is people want, because they're fighting the clock. They want everything done at once. Just like that's why people are making mistakes with this Ozempic and Wegovy and Zepbound, Mounjaro. They're trying to go up to the highest level too fast to get skinny fast, and then they're rebounding. Slow and steady wins the race. But if you're young and beautiful, rethink having that altered, because I'm hearing a lot of regret. 1-877-Doc-Dolly, don't go away. Hey guys, it's Dr. Dahlia. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our fantasy football pocket guide for beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
At Hotshot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hotshot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hotshot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hotshot Secret, powered by science.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.